Comparison is the thief of joy. This quote has become super popular because I think we can all relate to the feeling of comparing ourselves to others and coming up short. I also know the quote's been attributed to many people, and it's not totally clear who came up with it first. And I also think there are a couple of things underneath comparisonitis that are the true thieves of joy. But let's talk this through. I think there are two fundamental truths that relate to comparing oneself to others, which, if you really, really take these fundamental truths in, you can improve your own self esteem. You can be free of this horrible habit, be free of doing this, and be free of the pain that it causes. So, what are those truths? And you'll have to bear with me to let me explain these a little bit. But number one is that comparisonitis is based on a scarcity fixed mindset. And number two is that when you compare yourself to somebody else, you are comparing your insides to their outsides. So the next time you find yourself comparing your looks, your lifestyle, your achievements to somebody else's, and you feel that you have fallen short, that you are defective, that there's something wrong with you, or that it's like super unfair, I'd like you to bring these truths to mind, and I believe it will help enormously. Okay, so many of you know that I was a psychotherapist for 20 years before I started this YouTube channel, and I worked primarily with people with anxiety and trauma, adults. I worked with adults, and self-esteem issues were a major focus of the work. And comparisonitis really gets in there because not only do we learn this painful habit from our families of origin in one way or another, it's also reinforced by our society. It's all around us, and we're not even taught that we don't have to do it, right? And I'm going to clarify that a little because I know people will say, well, you do have to compare yourself. Like if you're number two in a class, there's a number one. We're going to come back to that. Yes, if you get a 95, somebody else gets a 96, or that person is taller than you and you're shorter, fine. But that's not what causes the pain. And as you probably know, identifying the source of the pain is the way to solve the problem. So let's go to number one. When we compare ourselves to others, we are looking at what we are without. We are looking at what they have, whether it's a physical thing, an achievement, an attribute. We're looking at what they have that we don't have. And there's a feeling of scarcity in there. And I'm going to give you an exercise in just a moment to identify these feelings for yourself. But there's a feeling of scarcity, almost as if, like, if they have it, I won't be able to have it. Or they have it either because there's something unfair going on or because they have these other attributes I don't have. Like you could be comparing yourself to somebody and falling short in like 7 or 8 ways, right? It doesn't have to be only one way. But there's a feeling of scarcity. And then fixed mindset versus growth mindset is a concept that is used a lot in educational circles. It's been researched a lot. And a fixed mindset is sort of like, well, I'm bad at math. I'll always be bad at math, and we may as well just give up here. And a growth mindset is, well, I don't do the best at math, but when I get tutored or I have a teacher who speaks in a language I understand, I can actually do pretty well. So I'm going to try to find a tutor who really works with me well. I'm going to put in a little more effort, and I believe I can develop that part of my brain. That's a growth mindset. So a growth mindset leads us to the steps we can take to improve whatever it is we want to improve or achieve wherever it is we want to go, right? The growth mindset says, I can get there. And that's why I said the comparing thing is not the piece that causes you pain. So when you compare yourself to somebody who is taller or shorter, yep, that's a fact. That person got a 95, you got an 88, right? But that's not the piece that causes you pain because one could look at that and be motivated by it, right? Like we can see things that somebody might have or may have achieved or, something that they do. And we might be like, wow, a little bit envious, but also just sort of like, wow, I would like that. And it can be motivating. It can encourage us to take the steps to get there. We could even look at that person and be like, wow, how did they get there? And with the steps that they took, would those be the same steps I would need to take? Or are they even the steps I would want to take? But I can use them as an example to flesh out my plan of what it is I want to do or achieve, right? So I can be motivated. I don't have to see myself here and them here and feel like this is just about me being defective. So, if comparing yourself motivates you, you're probably not watching this video, but that would be a good thing, right? So, you may even want to think about, is there a way I can shift how I look at this? But usually the comparisonitis comes up with somehow I'm defective. So, let's do that exercise I referred to. Take a deep breath. Sometimes it's good to just kind of like, whew, realize where you are, feel your feet on the floor. Take a nice big breath of air. It always helps. Notice right now, just taking that deep breath of air, how your body feels. And then I'm going to ask you to bring to mind a recent event where you were comparing yourself to somebody, where you felt badly, right? So bring up a recent spate of comparisonitis. Really picture it. I want you to close your eyes if that's a better way. It's usually the better way to envision things, but not for everybody. But you can close your eyes, really bring it to mind, picture what was happening, time of day, where you were, everything going on. As you're doing that, notice what changes for you physically. Are there any physical feelings that come up when you think of that event? And just notice. Now, for me, the feeling could be sort of one of like tightening up and clenching. That's kind of the feeling I get. For other people, it might be upset stomach, it might be a headache, all sorts of things. Pain in the neck, which is always a great metaphor. But notice what you felt. And then notice what emotion it is that you are feeling. What emotion goes with that event and those physical feelings. And just take a moment and see if you can name that emotion. And for many people, this could be shame, right? I'm defective, something wrong with me. It could be jealousy or envy. It could be a feeling of like it's not fair. So note the emotion. And then I'd like you to think about the negative core belief about yourself or the world that goes with that event, those physical feelings, and those emotional feelings. And often the negative core belief that goes with this is something along the lines of, I'm defective, I'm not good enough. It could also veer towards the I'm unlovable, or for some people, it could be I'm unlucky, life's unfair, right? Notice what that negative core belief is, because it's truly that negative core belief that is contributing to the way you're seeing this and causing a lot of the pain that comes up with it. And I'd also like you to notice as you're thinking about that example that your comparisonitis, your focus on that, right, is narrowing your vision. So you're bringing up that event and you are focusing on probably a fairly narrow portion of the event. And you probably are attributing certain meanings to that item or achievement or personal attribute. You are attributing something to it that goes beyond the actual thing. And the attribution, the attributing to that achievement thing or attribute some other stuff is going to be in truth number two, which I'll get to in a second. But just coming back for a moment to how the comparisonitis has narrowed in your focus. I could say with a pretty high degree of certainty, obviously not for everybody, but for most people, that narrowing will be related to your negative core belief, which existed before you started comparing yourself to others in this way. Generally, our negative core beliefs develop very early in childhood based on what's going on in our family of origin or our caregivers, specific experiences we have, or a general atmosphere in which we grew up, where we develop this negative belief about ourselves, and it is so strong And then we interpret a lot of the world through that belief. So, healing that belief is really the way to get over comparisonitis, improve your self esteem, and really live happier in many, many ways. And many of you have already downloaded the PDF I have on healing your negative core belief. It's called Transforming Your Negative Core Belief. And many people tell me it's been super, super helpful for them. So if you have not downloaded that, the link will be in the description to this video. And it walks you through a few steps to identify your core one or two beliefs. It helps you identify a positive adaptive belief, which you can work towards replacing the negative. And it gives you a few exercises to do that. So many people have told me it's super useful. So download it if you haven't, it's free. But that's why I said this phrase, comparison is the thief of joy, which is true. But the true thief is the self esteem issue underneath it, probably developed through some type of negative belief about yourself or the world. So I want to give you an example here. Now, this is one I think many women will relate to, but you walk into a room and there's somebody there who's just strikingly beautiful, and you all of a sudden don't feel great about yourself. You wish you hadn't dressed the way you had. You wish you'd paid a little more attention, maybe, or no matter what, you just feel less than. Well, it's not just the element that the person is better looking or dressed better or gets more attention. It's what we attribute to that too. So, what we say to ourselves about how our not being as attractive, what that will mean for us, and what it means for them. And usually we'll think, oh, she must be a much happier person because I would be happy if I looked like that. She'll be able to find a partner faster, which maybe, I don't know. I don't know if there's research on that. I don't know that is true, but let's say it was true. Finding a partner faster doesn't necessarily mean it will be a better partner. I don't think divorce rates are lower based on physical attractiveness of the different people, but we will attribute they'll be happier, their life will be easier, they'll have a better partner. We might even feel they're a better person. So we compare ourselves and then we have a whole story that goes with it. So this is the fundamental truth number 2, which is that when we compare ourselves to others, we are comparing our insides, how we feel, with somebody else's outsides, how they look, how they appear, what they've achieved. We don't really know if they're happier, not happier, have better relationships, have worse relationships. We know nothing about them. Let's say you see somebody and they have a career where they're earning a huge amount of money more than you. They may even be showing it off and doing all sorts of things you wish you could do. But you don't know what's going on. You don't know. Their partner could be a gambling addict spending all their money. They themselves could have some kind of problem where their money is just being flushed down a hole. They could be borrowing all sorts of money. You don't know what's going on, right? Now, being a therapist, I had an inside seat on this. So I'm going to give you a couple examples, and not specific, nothing that will violate anybody's privacy. So I had one client who was strikingly beautiful. She really was, really like fit the image in the US anyway of what beauty is, right? And she got a lot of attention for it. Now, she grew up also in a wealthy family. So you could look at her, you'd be like, wow, she's beautiful and she's wealthy. But she was quite neglected emotionally. Her primary caretakers, let's say, were not present for her at all. She felt that she got a lot of attention from people, but they didn't know who she was. They didn't really know anything about her. And she also felt like they really didn't care about her. She felt that, I mean, she would never use these terms, so these were my terms, but a lot was projected onto her because she looked that way. She would receive people's projections that actually had nothing to do with her. She was actually really uncomfortable with how she looked, and she had gotten into a number of situations that were quite dangerous and traumatic because of how attractive she was. So that's sort of what I'm talking about. Like, we don't know what people's experience is. So if we widen that lens, remember how I said it narrowed it in? If we widen that lens to what like a full experience might be like here, we'll probably see this very, very differently. For part of the time that I was a therapist, my practice was in an area which was surrounded by some very, very, very wealthy towns. In fact, one of the towns was featured in the original Stepford Wives film because it's sort of like beautiful. Everything looks beautiful from the outside, and that was sort of the point of the Stepford Wives. But in any case, there was an element where it kind of felt like that in a way because so many people in that town were so attached to presenting this perfect image. But being a therapist, I would see and hear and know what actually went on in the homes and the serious issues that people dealt with, and the depression and anxiety and addiction problems and all sorts of things. So you could look at somebody who's living in a $5 million house and you could be like, wow, they must have it great. If I had that, I'd be happy. That's a faulty attribution. You don't know that if you had that, you'd be happy. It might solve some of your current day problems, right? But looking at it in that way, like, wow, if I had that, my life would be great, is a myth and it's causing you pain. It's a myth because it's actually not true. That is not what makes people happy. That's also not what necessarily makes their lives easy. Their lives might be easier in this way than that way, but I would not say necessarily. In fact, a lot of money can sometimes mask problems. Now, I know talking about this, like, I can just imagine all the pushback I'll get on this, but it doesn't matter what thing you are comparing yourself to another, falling short, you can see it differently. You can take whatever it is. Again, maybe that person better at shooting baskets than you are, right? They're taller, they got a better shot, they're better at basketball. Okay, so what? Right? So let me know, comment, because I do like to get feedback. Does this make sense? Like, we just have these make believe stories in our head and we believe them. And then we make ourselves miserable because of them. So I'd love to have you join me in changing this. And then I know social media can contribute to this, but you have to remember what social media is. That's what somebody wants to present to the world. It's not reality. A handful of other examples when I was talking about the person who had, maybe borrowed all sorts of money, which is why they can show off with their fancy car or their boat or their trips to Paris or whatever it is that you are envying and feeling like you fall short, right? Think of Bernie Madoff. I mean, he was at the top of the world and he died in jail, disowned by his family because he was committing fraud all those years. Like, it's such a strikingly horrible story. But we can't know what somebody's insides are like, whether it's inside their home, inside their bank account, or inside their head. Dan Harris, who is a very well-known newscaster, and he ended up starting an organization called 10% Happier because he was having panic attacks. So here he was, sort of top of his career, known extensively in that field, and yet he was suffering with terrible panic attacks. And he found relief through meditation and really like looking at the world very differently. And he is still doing the original career, but he's started a new company called 10% Happier. Many of you probably know about it. But those are just some examples. So see if you can bring back the memory you were thinking of earlier that I asked you to bring to mind, where you were comparing yourself to somebody else, and see if you can broaden the lens. Is there a way to see this differently? Is there a way to see your common humanity with that person and everybody else on the planet? See if you can incorporate that whatever achievement they have reached that you would like to reach does not necessarily mean they're a better person or their lives are better. So I might be going on here a little bit too much. Let me know. But I feel this so strongly. I really do. And I feel like it's such an unnecessary pain that we're causing ourselves. And again, I'm not blaming you or anybody because we are just not taught. We don't have to do this. We can live more joyfully. And it doesn't mean, okay, another example here. It doesn't mean you don't have to strive. Okay, I play speed chess. I play speed chess online. I started during the pandemic. I'm still doing it. My brain's gotten really kind of fast on it, but I'm not like particularly good. So I can still sort of try, right? And chess is funny because it gives you a rating. Like you get this rating and there's all these people who have higher ratings and lower. And Sometimes I make progress with my rating and then I fall back and, it bounces up and down. I will never be like a major competitor in chess. I do it for fun. So I can use the comparing to be like, oh, okay, maybe I can study something and improve my scores. But then sometimes I just want to play for fun and not think too much. And then my score goes down. And that might seem like a silly example, but what I find is that people who have a habit of comparing themselves do it in every area of their life. So if you have a hobby or an interest, you love to garden, and then you compare yourself to, the person down the street who has just this fantastic garden. You don't have to do that. You could be like appreciative. You could look and see, oh, what is it in their garden that I do actually like? What might I bring into mine? It's not a better than. It doesn't mean that person's better than you. And then when it's career and school and all of that, do you know what? There will always be somebody who feels like they're here, and there'll always be somebody who feels like they're below where you are. In every area of your life, there's someone above, there's someone below. It doesn't matter. We're all in this like common pool of humanity. We do the best we can, and it's good enough, right? So I did just shoot a number of videos on perfectionism. So if you really are like, no, Barbara, this makes no sense to me because I want to have the best garden in the neighborhood. I want to get the 100 at school. I want to be the top of my class. You can want to be those things and you can work towards it. But you don't have to feel badly if you're number two instead of number one. That's still great. And having a perfectionist mindset, another thing that can really steal joy. I think they go together. So be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can be notified when those videos are released. I'm not really sure if they're coming out before or after this one. But beginning to expand your view of your own humanity, your own worthwhileness, no matter what you achieve. You're a worthwhile person. No matter where you rank in that particular area or that one, you are worthwhile. You're good enough. And we're all just kind of trying to get through this life the best we can. So let me know what you think. I do try to read almost all my comments. I try to respond when I can. And I'd love to know because it also helps me know what I should put out a video on. So take care, and I will see you guys next week.